You are listening to Accents, a radio show for literature, art, and culture. I'm your host, Katerina Stoikova, and with me today are Jessica Moller, Marketing Director at the Carnegie Center for Literacy and Learning in Lexington, and Claudia Mair, the coordinator in of the newly created Kentucky Black Writers Collaborative. Hi, Jess and Claudia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. We're happy to be here.
Yes, we are. Thanks, Katerina.
And Jessica and I have known each other for over a decade. And Claudia, I am meeting you for the first time. So excited. I have questions for you. I look forward to hearing your writing. But first, Jess, tell us about this newly created Kentucky Black Writers Collaborative. Talk about the need for such organization.
Yeah, so the Kentucky Black Writers Collaborative was really something we started discussing years ago. And it was, in response to understanding and the recognition of systemic racism in the world that we operated in. So seeing it in education and publishing, the sphere in which the Carnegie operates. And we had never really figured out a way to try to make amends or try to better accommodate our students to have this more inclusive environment. We knew that because of systemic racism, we were missing really important voices in our classes, and that the writers in our community were not benefiting as much because they didn't have as of a diverse and inclusive writing world, literary world that we know is needed and that exists for great stories. And so following a series of police brutality and murders, and the one that hit specifically at home for us, which of course is Breonna Taylor, we felt it was the time. I honestly regretted that we hadn't done it yet, but at that moment, I think we are called by greater forces to demand action and not just talk about it. And fortunately, we have a wonderful director and an incredible board and staff who all was behind this concept of community for Black writers that would allow them to take classes for free. Again, recognizing the financial burdens because of systemic racism that impacted the passing of generational wealth and removing wealth from our Black Americans. So the Carnegie Center felt it was our responsibility, and not just for our Black writers, but for our white writers and other writers of color, because they too are being deprived of these voices because of these structural systems that exist in our culture that have removed these important voices from our discussion. So it really was a no-brainer. It made sense. And Neil and the board began a very competitive process to find the right leader to move us through the Kentucky Black Writers Collaborative. And of course, they landed on Claudia, who you all will get to know shortly, and has just elevated our staff and elevated our mission, which of course is to empower people to explore and express their voices. And Mariella in the back expressing hers.
She approves. She approves. Thank you, Jessica and Claudia. Such an honor. How does that feel to coordinate and to head such an organization that is going to make so much good?
I cannot believe my good fortune. I don't think I could make up a job for myself that would be better than this one. And I was a full-time writer for years. This is actually better because I have so much more interaction. And of course, a steady paycheck is a lovely thing. But yeah, I am so honored and thrilled to be a part of this initiative that is so very important. I like to say that my job is to amplify, elevate, and celebrate Black voices in Kentucky. And that is exactly what we are already doing. people. I think we have about 50 members now. And they are beginning to take the classes, beginning to engage with the Carnegie Center to a greater degree. So it's really a wonderful time.
What are some activities, classes, opportunities that are underway right now?
Right now, they are able to take any Carnegie class, any Carnegie writing class or language class for free. We also give high consideration to KBWC members so that if they want to go deeper, for example, having a mentor, they can get that at a reduced rate. And, you know, some of our other programs and offerings that are not the classes, we do try really hard to work with them and let them participate at a reduced rate.
And who is eligible to join the collaborative?
Any African American person or Black person. They could be any person from the African diaspora who lives in Kentucky, who's a Kentucky resident.
So how can our listeners get involved or get more information about the Kentucky Black Writers Collaborative?
We have information on the Carnegie Center website, which is carnegiecenterlex.org, or they can write to me, Claudia, at carnegiecenterlex.org, and I would be happy to help them become a part.
Thank you. Claudia, you mentioned that you have worked as a full-time writer for 15 years. Can you tell us more about the genres you work in and about your published works?
Sure. I don't even know how many years it was. It doesn't seem like it was 15, but it was at least several years. I got my start from a religious publisher. I had a blog at the time. It was 2004. And I was pretty sure that I would never be a part of the Christian writing community because I just did not fit the profiles. You know, speaking once again of feeling marginalized and disenfranchised. Most of Christian fiction was white people. They were, you know, often, you know, very, very obviously spiritual leaders, you know, like maybe the wives of pastors and things like that. They would generally have more money than I had. And at the time in 2004, my husband struggled with a drug addiction. And I also struggled with mental illness and chronic depression. So I never felt like I would fit the profile of the Christian novelist. So I just kind of gave up and decided, well, I'll tell you something that happened. My husband needed surgery and we did not have a car. We did not even know anyone that we could ask for a ride. These were the days well before Uber. And so we got on the city bus to take him to his surgery. And I was 40 years old at the time. I felt like this was such a low point that, you know, here I was 40, didn't even have a car, didn't have much money for anything, had a house full of kids. And I was really discouraged that day. They took him back to surgery. And then I went to the chapel to pray at the hospital. And I didn't pray very long. I think the gist of my prayer was, God help. And then I went back to the waiting room and I sat down and I happened to look next to me and there was a stack of magazines. And on top of it was a copy of Today's Christian Woman. And for the first time in all the years that I'd ever seen Today's Christian Woman, there was a Black woman on the cover. And so I picked up the magazine. I read every bit of that magazine, including the advertisements. I was so struck by this amazing turn of events. And I actually stole the magazine. I took it home with me. And that night I held it to my heart and I said, God, if you just let me write for you, I will tell people like me that you love them. People who were poor, people who were in any way on the margins, people who were mentally ill, people who really struggled spiritually, who weren't the homeschooling pastor's wife. And I said that I would tell people like me that God loved them. So I still didn't think, I would fit the profile. So I just said, well, forget it. I'm just going to start a blog. And at that time, blogging was just really coming into its own. I started a blog called Ragamuffin Diva, in which I talked about my very messy spirituality. And suddenly the blog had thousands of readers. People would put a link on their blogs to my blog. So I think at one point I had 50 other bloggers linking my blog to theirs, and it turned into thousands of readers. And from that, a publisher, the vice president of a Random House imprint, wrote to me, and he said, I'd like for you to write a novel for us. Now, my blog was not, fiction related. It was completely nonfiction. He didn't even know if I could write a novel, but I absolutely was not going to miss that opportunity. So I ended up starting writing a novel, not under contract. And maybe 4 months into writing the novel, just as I was finishing up my first draft, I saw that the senior editor of his publishing house was in Publishers Weekly magazine saying that he just did not believe a Black writer would do well in the CBA, which was the Christian Booksellers Association, the main number of businesses that supported Christian bookstores. He did not think that my book would sell. And so I contacted the publisher who I was in contact with. I wasn't in contact with this editor at all. And he was like, well, I don't want to step on his toes, just, because he's a senior editor, just keep writing. So I kept writing. I finished the book. And finally, I let him know that I had a complete manuscript. And he said that he was about to quit and that he would no longer be able to help me. And so I had written this book. It was like the end of an episode of the old 70s Black comedy Good Times, where you're just about to get to that point where you're over the hump and this amazing thing happens that'll change your life. And then it didn't happen. However, a few weeks later, he wrote me and told me he got a job at Alive Communications, which is the largest Christian agency in the country. And he would like to be my agent. And so I said yes. I mean, first of all, this publishing offer just fell into my lap. And then after that, an agent just fell into my lap. He was able to sell the books. And I got my first book deal, which was a 6-book deal at a time. So I went from there. I mean, some other crazy things happened, but it was the start of my career. And I think the one thing that I did right was, by hook or by crook, I exposed my writing so that people could read it. And of course, this was a free format. So I would tell any writer that you're not going to get anywhere if nobody sees your writing. And that's one thing that I will be sharing with the collaborative, ways to not only start writing, continue writing, grow as a writer, but ways to get your writing out there.
Claudia, that's quite amazing story. I want to know, did you write 6 books? Did you write those 6 books?
I did. I wrote those 6 books. The crazy thing that happened was, you know, I'm writing from my own experience and from culturally how I see the world, which was not particularly the way other white Christian writers were seeing the world. So there was a romantic interest in my first 3 books, which was a kind of genre bending mystery, romance. So in the second book, can
you give us the titles? I would love to.
Yeah. The first
all
one,
6, yeah.
Yeah, the first one is called Murder, Mayhem, and a Fine Man. The second one is Death, Deceit, and some smooth jazz. And the third one is called Deadly Charm. So the main romantic lead male is, his name is Jazz. So in the second book, Smooth Jazz refers to him. And he's also a jazz lover. But there was this tension between the 2 characters. And of course, this was a very conservative Christian publisher. You absolutely could not have a sex scene in any way. However, I did have this sexual tension between the characters because they were older. They were in their mid-30s. They both had, for whatever reason, they were not, squeaky clean Christians. They had lives. They had been sexually active. And so I had the sexual tension between them, yet I did have them resist temptation because this was, what my publisher expected. Well, the second book had, they had just put the ARCs out into the marketplace to get reviews. The first one had already come out, and I got a call from my agent just as we were developmentally editing the third book. And he said, I have news, and they're canceling that entire series because they said they are too sexy. And I was like, what? There are no.
I guess it's not enough just to resist temptation.
I guess you cannot be tempted at all, Katerina, which, who lives like that? I did not know anyone. In fact, most of the people that I knew probably would have had the sex. So I was crestfallen after that conversation. So not only did they cancel that book, they canceled all 3 of them. And I had to buy the remaining inventory that were already printed of the first book.
Was that by contract?
Yeah. I had to buy all of those books back.
That is devastating and unfair. I
had to pay back my advance. So I had to pay back $10,000 and buy all of those books. And I was not able to sell those books. I had to donate those books because I was aware
how difficult it is.
I was forbidden to sell them. So
wow.
It was devastating. And of course, I had 3 more books that I was supposed to write with this company. Well, for the second book, as standard in publishing, they had sent me a letter that deemed it acceptable for publication. And I said, they told me they read this book, that it was acceptable for publication. Why am I paying back in advance? And it's not like I had $10,000 laying around. That money was spent, almost as quickly as it came. And I said, there's no way that I will write the other 3 books for them. So my agent had to negotiate. I did not know for years that they wanted me to pay more than $10,000. And he negotiated that I would only pay $10,000 and that I would only pay them back once the same book series sold to another publisher. So we were at a standstill, and I said, I absolutely will not write another word for them. And he finally got me out of everything. And in the interim, while this battle was happening, the man who had become my agent, and he actually went back to being in publishing, and I got a different agent. But the man who discovered me in the first place asked me to write a book for him, for his publishing house. And he said, I want you to write a race book. And of course, I had no idea what he meant by a race book. And I just, figured he wanted me to focus on racial issues. So I wrote yes. Zora. Yeah, I wrote Zora and Nikki.
What is a race book? By his understanding, what is a race book?
I don't know, because I never asked him. I just started writing. I was still grieving what had happened with these other books. I named the main character Amanda Bell Brown after my great grandmother. And I felt that I had brought shame to her name. So it was really a really tough time. And so he was like, just write this race book for me. I didn't know what he meant, but I figured it would be somehow about race. So I created a story about, if you can think of the most conservative religious leader like Jerry Falwell or Pat Robertson, except younger, and have his son be interested in a Black woman who is also a preacher, but not the opposite of conservative, very liberal, Black, very wealthy. So I had these two characters who are opposite ends of the spectrum. Both preachers' kids meet at a Bible study that neither one of them was supposed to go to because they were both kind of running away from their churches. And they met and just kind of collided. So Zora and Nikki is about the race issues that came up for them as they were falling in love, race issues that they had no idea how to negotiate. This is the book. It's called Zora and Nikki, a novel in black and white. This is the book that I'm meeting with a production company tomorrow. They want to buy the film rights and make it into a movie if they get the funding for the movie. So I wrote 2 books for this publisher in this interim. And then the 6 books that I had with the very conservative house was sold to Simon & Schuster. So those 6 books came out with Simon & Schuster.
Fantastic. Incredible story, Claudia. I hope your meeting tomorrow goes great, and then we can watch the movie soon. Who would you have in the lead roles? Have you thought about it?
Yeah, I don't know if your readers would know these actors because they're not like the biggest name lead actors, but Tracy Toms.
Okay.
Tracy Toms would be my pick for the actress. She's really pretty, but not in like that Halle Berry pretty way that, you know, that most mere mortals would be intimidated by. And Jazz is biracial and very beautiful. And I thought Daniel Sunjata would be a great Jazz character. But this is a small independent film company, and I don't think they would have money for the big names. So I would just be really interested to see how another artist from another medium would approach the book. I would not think that it would be exactly as I wrote it. You know, film and novels are very different. But I would really be interested in seeing another artist's interpretation. And this is not the first time that I was approached with someone wanting to make a Zora and Nikki movie. It's really interesting. Somebody approached me years ago, but it fell through. And I don't put a lot of energy into these things. You know, Marvel Comics asked me to write for them years ago. I signed a contract and then I never heard from them again. Disney wanted to make a television show for my Exorcista series, paranormal teenage series. And once they really understood what I was trying to do with it, she was a teenage exorcist, they thought it was too dark. And then Kelsey Grammer's team had a table read, and I hadn't even written a book yet. It was just my proposal, the proposal that was used to sell the books to Simon and Schuster. And they went through it considering a television show. Nothing happened. So, yeah, I don't put a whole lot of energy into it, but on the other hand, movies do get made from books. So it's still exciting to me. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this will all pan out.
Well,
I just wanted to add, Claudia, when I saw that Zora and Nikki had been picked up, and hearing you talk about it more, you realize the relevance of that storyline, especially today with the split in the Southern Baptist Convention and all these leaders who are saying this is not who we are. And so I just feel like a book you wrote, you know, so many years ago is being picked up for a movie because it is still relevant today, perhaps even more so. So kudos to you for having a book that stands the test of time.
Thank you. Someone told me that it was definitely ahead of its time in Christian fiction for sure. And it was nominated for a Christie Award, which is the highest award in Christian fiction, which there have only been 3 Black nominees since I think it started. I don't know if there have been any since, because I really don't write Christian fiction anymore and I don't keep up with it. But at the time, there had only been, out of hundreds of nominees, 3 Black people, 3 Black women, no Black men at all. And I was one of 3. And that was really, really exciting.
Claudia, between writing all these books and blogs, when did you find the time to go to Spalding MFA and graduate?
I did not go to Spalding till years after this. I think I went to Spalding in 2015. My books came out around 2008. Mm-hmm. So not too long after the last Exorcister book came out, and then I did a nonfiction book about St. Teresa of Avila, I just stopped writing. I did not feel like I belonged in Christian fiction. I did not feel like my voice, I think my voice mattered because it was needed in such a white space. However, I didn't feel like my voice was honored. And, you know, there were things like secret meetings with almost all of those publishers about whether or not they should put a Black person on the cover of my books, because they were like, well, if we put a Black person on the cover, will white people buy this book? Will white readers think this book is for them? Which, you know, it doesn't happen the other way around. That white people don't say, if we put a white person on our book, will Black people read it? Will Asian people read it? No. So things like that were very discouraging to me. And of course, the quality of Christian fiction is nowhere near the quality of literary fiction. And I felt lost, and I really wanted to elevate my writing. And I felt like I had all these Christian books behind me. And how in the world would I make the leap to literary fiction? And I didn't know. So I just stopped writing for years. And my best friend, who is an only child. I am 7 of 9 children. She's an only child, so she's very bossy. She somehow talked me into going to graduate school with her. She talked me into applying, and I did not apply to the last day. And I probably got that application in at the last minute before the deadline. It was very similar because I wasn't even on Carnegie Center's email list. I did not take classes at Carnegie Center, quite frankly, because I really couldn't afford them. So she was on the Carnegie Center's email list, and she said, "This is your job. You're going to have to apply for this job." So she kind of pushed me into going to Spalding after this this desert that I was in of not writing. And the main reason that I wanted to go to Spalding when I finally decided that I would go is I had a novel, not a Christian novel, that I had been working on for about 15 years at that time. And I just did not have skill to write this novel the way I wanted it to be. And also, and I don't know if your listeners will remember this, but 9 years ago, my son, he had just turned 18, had a psychotic break. He took the elevator to the top of the parking structure at Victorian Square downtown, which is now called the Square, where Urban Outfitters is. That parking structure, he took the elevator, up to the 6th floor to the very top. And in a psychotic episode, he jumped from the top and he survived. He actually fell face first. He shattered every bone in his face. And it is an absolute miracle that he could survive a 6-story fall where he fell face first and live. But he did. And I wanted to write about that. I wanted to write that story because it was so heavy for me as well as him to bear that it was one of those things as a writer that I had to write, that I would have no peace until I wrote it. So during the 2 years that I was at Spalding, I worked on trying to tell his story. For 2 years, I could not get it right. I tried, and I ended up with 8 pages in my final semester. And then I was at one of my mentors, one of her talks about writing collage memoir. And suddenly, in this very last semester, the light went off in my head, and I realized I could write it as kind of a fragmented memoir where the chapters would be very short. And of course, I could have the beautiful elevated language that I always wanted to write like. And that story became my thesis project the very last semester. Once we left residency, I had 6 weeks to have whatever I was going to have for my thesis project. Well, you know how that goes. 75 pages was required for fiction or for creative nonfiction, which is what I studied there. And I wanted to finish the entire book. So in 6 weeks, I went from 8 pages to the complete book. And right after I graduated, a publisher picked up my thesis. So just a small indie publisher, but I just wanted to be done with it. I wanted to get out into the world. I wasn't trying to shop it for 2 or 3 years before someone picked it up. So I got it published right away. And that's what I'll read from today.
Wonderful. Please read for us.
Okay. The book is called Don't You Fall Now. And that That is from a line, Don't You Fall Now, it's from a line from Langston Hughes' poem, The Mother to Son, which, was totally apropos. And it's most famous for its first line, life to me ain't been no crystal stair. So I have this snippet from the poem, Don't You Fall Now, for I still going, honey, I still climbing, and life for me ain't been no crystal stair. This is the first part, April 27th, 2012. Bam, 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 bam. The voice in my head is my mama's. They knocking like the police. Zizi, help me, I say. My agile tween daughter leaps out of my bed and rushes into the painting studio that was once our living room. I hobble behind her, numb feet slapping against the yellow concrete floor, my heart thumping like a talking drum. She pulls the shears aside and peers out, confirms what I already know. Mom, it's the police. Kamal, it's got to be my youngest son. He's supposed to be at his brother's. I swing the door open to a pair of officers. The young uniformed one appears earnest and sincere. The older, bald, plainclothes cop, somber. The elder of the two does the talking. I'm Detective Franz with Lexington Police Homicide, and this is Officer blah, blah, blah. Are you Kamal Bernie's mother? Homicide? The police were here 2 months ago to the day about my boy, but not a homicide detective. I hold my arms. His news will kill me. Yes, I am. There's been an accident. He fell off of a building. Oh God, I think I am going to die right in this instance. He's okay. He's at the hospital right now. He's okay? Yes, ma'am. He's in intensive care. Relief washes over me, yet a fleeting image of Kamal flying wingless toward the street, skyscraper static in the background drifts to mind. He's falling like jumpers from the burning Twin Towers, falling like a ragged brown leaf in the wind, but I can't picture him hitting the ground. I think it was from Rupp Arena, the man says. I stare at Detective Franz like he's spoken some archaic form of English I can barely comprehend. The Rupp, a huge convention center downtown, flashes before me. I feel sick to my stomach. Come in, I say. I step aside and let the officers into the studio. I teach painting to women in my spare time. I'm trying to make a business of it, but it's going slowly. The officers take in my creative space. A wall, the color of young grass, greets the policeman. My friend, novelist and artist Lisa Sampson, has chalked the words Good Medicine Expressive Art Studio below a gilded frame print of Our Lady of Guadalupe. 3 black chalkboard walls surround the green, decorated with graffiti applied by some of my painting students, but mostly by my own kids, Abby, Kamal, Nia, and Zizi. A tiny sofa sits in the back of the room. I ask the men if they would like to have a seat. They refuse, so Zizi and I ease into the small black canvas cushions. Tell me about your son's state of mind, Detective Franz fires at me. His state of mind? How much time do you have? Now I'm going to skip. This is number 3, psychological profile. Now Detective Franz fires questions at me in my little studio. He's crafting a psychological profile to help him determine what would make Kamal do such a thing. I understand this police business and try to cooperate. Tell me about your son's state of mind. I think he's becoming manic. He's bipolar with psychotic features. He's been non-compliant with his medicines, but I made him get back on them today. I could tell he was getting sick again. I'm tapping my foot. Tap, 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 tap. That very morning, Kamal talked about following the birds, listening to their messages. I don't tell the officers this. Have there been any stressors in his life? He broke up with a girlfriend and he's having a hard time with it. And he hasn't been able to deal with high school. He was trying to complete his courses online, but now he has too much trouble focusing. I took him to the Fayette County Public Schools Administration building today to drop out so he can get his GED. But he ended up changing his mind and is going to try it again. I know I'm rambling, but I can't stop. My pitch soars upward at the end of every statement. He went for a walk after that, and then he said he was going to his brother's. Tap, 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 tap. What's his brother's name and number? Lumumba Bandalay. And his phone's disconnected. That's why I wasn't concerned when Kamal didn't call to let me know he was there. Any other stressors? I don't know. I mean, his relationship with his friends is a little strained. He hasn't been himself lately. I resist the urge to use clinical terms like delusions or grandiosity. Has he mentioned wanting to hurt himself? No, I shake my head almost violently. Does he use drugs or alcohol? He smokes a little weed. God, I hope it's only that. I know what all these questions are, but I don't have time for this right now. I stand abruptly. Do you know if anyone was with him tonight? Says Officer Franz. I am done talking. I need to go to my boy. The two officers step back like I'm too imposing of a figure to get in the way of. Would you like me to take you, Detective Franz offers? No, I snap. I have the strange idea that if I get into his car, he'll know that I don't have car insurance, a broke person's irrational fear. I'll drive myself. Are you sure? He asks as I'm heading out the door. I see that I'm in my pajamas and turn back. Thoughts swirl around in my head like they're swept up in a funnel cloud as I try to figure out what I need to do next. I have to call his dad. Zizi hands me the landline. No sooner than she gives me the receiver, she hurries to my bedroom to root around for clothes for me. The two policemen stand like sentries in my home studio, waiting. Ken answers on the second ring. His hello is terse and weary. Kamal fell from a building. He groans as if he felt the impact himself. I'm headed to the hospital. I'll talk to you when I find out anything. I thrust the phone back at Zizi, slide the clothes she hands me over my pajamas, snatch my keys and purse up from beside the little sofa, and scramble to the hospital, the two cops trailing behind me. And now I'm just going to skip to when I got to the hospital. And it is number 5. Good grief. When I reach Kamal's room, I step inside like I'm an apparition watching. So many people crowd around him. They're busy. I can't tell what they're doing. I can only see Kamal's bare legs lying still beneath a white sheet. A young woman steps beside me. She's pretty and dark-haired, efficient but kind. She wears blue scrubs. Are you the mom? I nod. I'm his nurse, Charlie Brown. Good grief. He's a little miracle, she says. Do you want to see him? I'm not sure I do. Charlie Brown urges me toward the gurney with a decisive nod. I follow her, my steps heavy with dread. His mom is here, she says, above the buzz of the room. People spread out like she's Moses parting a sea of lab coats. And I finally see my boy in fragments. His hand, the long tapered musician fingers torn and bloody. Abrasions chart a map of pain across his knuckles. I envision his hand when it hit the ground and ripped open his flesh. I see it bounce, his wrist slack. Kamal's torso is bare, his clavicle swollen and bluing, broken. A white plastic cervical collar circles his fractured neck. His head sits erect within it. I brace myself to look at his face. Oh, my boy. Kamal's beautiful face looks unnaturally flat. It spills around the cervical collar. His nose, lips, and eyes distorted. A scarlet opening splits a path across his forehead. He does not look like my son. He does not look like Kamal. This is not my boy. I open my mouth to scream, but no sound comes out. His face is broken, Charlie says. Every bone. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. I rock back on my heels. Oh, sweet Jesus. The team has to finish its work. Charlie Brown gently pulls me away. I follow her, docile and obedient. And then I'm standing by the door again, watching the hurried movements of medical professionals, my mouth still slack. The scream finally comes out as words. I have to go to sleep, I yell. I have fibromyalgia and I have to sleep. If I don't sleep, I'm going to get sick. I hold on to my arms, frantic. I have to go to sleep. She ushers me out into the hallway, rubbing my shoulders. The sweet nurse speaks in soothing tones. We'll take care of him. Go home and we'll see you when you get back. I speed walk down the hall, fumble for the elevator buttons and thrust myself inside the open doors, hold my arms, rock back and forth, run to my car, full tilt. I speed out of the parking lot, grateful there's no attendant to have to stop for. Flying down Limestone Street, I can't see. I'm crying so hard. Sounds I have never made before or since burst out of my body in wave after wave of unrelenting sobs. If I never believed in angels before, I do this night. Unseen hands guide me safely home. I understand now why the detective offered to drive me.
Wow, Claudia, you have made your mentors proud. So evocative, so stunning, so something that I want to read beginning to end. Everybody, you heard an excerpt from Claudia Love Mair's book, Don't You Fall Now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Published by whom?
It is published by a small publishing house called New Season Books and Media. It was printed on demand, so if you order it from Amazon, it's not available in any bookstores around here. You really do have to get it from Amazon. So if you get it, it's printed on demand, and it's about $13.99. But the electronic version, which actually has an interview with me at the end of, the electronic version is only $2.99 if you have a Kindle or if you use the Kindle app. Yeah, so.
Okay, thank you very much. So wonderful to meet you and to learn more about you and to talk to you about the Kentucky Black Writers Collaborative and for your journey as a writer with the low points and the high points. And I have the feeling that the high points are yet to come, the really high points are yet to come. And I look forward to learning more about you, reading more from you. And I would love to include Jess again, Jessica Moeller, and her lovely daughter to tell us about what else is coming up at the Carnegie Center.
Yeah, so thanks again, Claudia, for that really powerful and touching reading. I couldn't help but see Mariella walking over to me, and so many things of motherhood went through my mind.
It is a lovely guest. She's the loveliest guest today.
Yes. So in addition to our spring season, which has started, and there's several classes left that are still going that you can sign up for, we also have the Books in Progress conference coming up, which is something, oh my goodness, she hit her head. We have the Books in Progress conference coming up. There's an early bird rate right now. So if you go ahead and sign up for it, you'll save some money, and we've got a killer lineup. We're having Ada Limon. She's our keynote speaker, and she was supposed to be our keynote speaker last year when the pandemic hit. So we're really excited to have one of our National Book Award finalists leading the discussion. We'll also have Cardinal Sickles, Hannah Petard, Eric Reese. These are all people who are making and continue to make big waves in the literary world. And then I'd also like to mention what's happening next week. So next Tuesday is the meet and greet for the Kentucky Black Writers Collaborative. This is a chance for folks in the community to meet Claudia, to meet other staff members who are a part of the Black Writers Project. I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with JC McPherson. Jude McPherson is how he's published. That's his name with you. And he's also been an integral colleague through the Kentucky Black Writers Collaborative. So people will have a chance to meet him. And then Monet Proctor, who handles registration and program coordination with Sarah Chapman, will also be there. So just a great chance to meet some of our other colleagues and learn what the program can offer and how folks can be part of a community that I just think is really uplifting and necessary, and led by the delightful and wonderful Claudia.
Thank you so much, Jessica and Claudia.
And it's the 27th, correct, Claudia?
Yeah, 27th, 7 p.m.
7 p.m. and we'll have a Zoom link. It's free for anybody to come and meet and talk. It'll be a very casual kind of meet and greet, but stay tuned for that. We'll post updates on our social media accounts, and the Zoom link will also be on the website.
Thank you very much.